The psalm for today is Psalm 1. It's short, but I'm only going to read a little bit of it. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. Yifan found a great video to go with that psalm, which you might want to check out. I put the link in the worship service. I thought it was really cleverly done. I just love that image of the trees planted by the streams of water. I have this vision of roots sunk deep and fruits returning season after season. If I think of myself as a tree, then part of the water that nourishes me is my church family. Part of it is my handwork. Part of it are the books I read. I just finished a fun couple of alternate history sci-fi books, Cowell's Lady Astronaut series. Part of it, is the news. If I know about the wildfires in California or about the protests in Belarus, I feel like I understand my world better, and I can better figure out my place in it. And frankly, the new panda cub at the Washington Zoo is pretty cute. But in these last couple of weeks before the election, I feel like there are more and more people just playing word games and playing them in bad faith. And I am tired of trying to figure out what message they're sending me with their code words and their outrage. And they're not nourishing me. They're taking water away from my roots. They're stealing the fruits of calm and laughter I've managed to grow in this crazy time. In today's reading, the authorities in Jerusalem were not happy about Jesus of Nazareth showing up for the Passover celebration. They were especially not happy about the crowds loving him so much. So a bunch of different groups took a run at him, trying to use his words against him. And in doing so, they play word games with him. What commandment is the greatest? Well, there's only one answer to that. Love God. And since that was what the Pharisees said they were doing when they made so many ordinary people's lives just miserable by insisting that everyone follow all the rules of Moses to the letter, well, once Jesus had said, love God, then they had him under control. The way Jesus highlights how entwined the two kinds of love are is a great answer. You can't love God and make everyone else around you miserable. Loving your neighbor is a way of loving God. Your love of God has to show up in your love of nature. So Jesus beats them at their own game and escapes their control. Then Jesus has a turn and asks them about the Messiah. On one level, he's forcing them to acknowledge that saying that the Messiah is the son of David is way too small for what the Messiah really is. And the Messiah is the Son of God, and as such is so much bigger than David ever was. And even David acknowledged that. You could look at it one way and say it's Jesus beating the Pharisees at their own game, or you can just see them not acknowledging that they would have preferred to have a small-scale version of the Messiah that was easier to control. So much of today's reading is about struggling for control. Who's in control of Jerusalem? Who's in control of the temple? Who's in control of Jesus? Who's in control of God's laws? Who's in control of the words that are used to describe what is going on? And the tighter the authorities try to grasp for that control, the more obvious it becomes that they don't have control over anything. Because you can't control the love of God. The love we have for God, the love of God we discover by loving our neighbor, is all a pale, thin shadow of the love that God has for us. We have this idea that love is easy, and if it's not easy, then it's not love. Speaking just for myself, I am not easy to love. I can have a sharp tongue, and I can be too judgmental and overly focused on details and getting things done. I do love words and humor, and far too often I pursue a joke at the expense of other people's feelings. I curse too much, and I value cleverness in a way more than I should. Honestly, there are days when I struggle to just stand to be inside myself. So it is a marvel to me that God loves me, let alone loves me so much. God gives me a world to run around in where I can imagine that I have all sorts of control that I don't have. That somehow knowing about wildfires and the protests in Minsk and a panda cub in DC give me control in this crazy world, when it is just patently, flamingly obvious that it is completely beyond my control, and that the illusion of control makes me more likely to forget about God's love for me in favor of my own regard for myself. And God loves me so much that God gives me neighbors whom, if I actually get into loving relationship with them, will join me to control the world. As neighbors, we can come to solutions about climate change and controlling the virus and racism and whatever else is on our list. But first, we need to do all the hard work of loving each other, despite our opposition on wearing masks or burning fossil fuels or whether Black Lives Matter. That kind of love, the kind of love that doggedly, day after day, works on systemic problems in this world, it's not easy. It doesn't show up in word games played to see how many people can be entrapped in some kind of pointless argument. That kind of love that gives up the fantasy of having control in order to make space in this world for God's love to show up more vividly, that kind of love is really, really hard. But that is the kind of love that waters all our roots, lets all of us bear fruit. And it is the kind of love that God is offering us and asking us to show, instead of playing word games that cause our roots to shrivel and our fruit to wither. So play with love, not with words. You won't have more control, but you'll care less about the control you never had anyway. Amen.